Hi everyone. Okay, so over the last few days we've been on a bit of a roll with the Nexus 5. We've been taking a look at absolutely every aspect of it. So now it's time to start comparing it to other leading handsets. If you like the review videos, if you find these helpful, please do drop a like on, drop us a comment as well. Feel free to ask any questions, and do share these videos with your friends. And if you're not already a subscriber, please do subscribe. We have new uploads every single day, sometimes multiple uploads a day when we have a big device launch like this. So plenty of content for you. Now, let's first start with the look and feel of these devices, because both devices weigh exactly the same, and for all intents and purposes, they are incredibly similar. Almost identical thickness, if not absolutely identical thickness, made slightly more difficult to measure just because the S4 has a slightly curved back to it, where the Nexus 5 is very much a candy bar and nice and flat. Well, flatter anyway. When we actually consider the screens, both run a 5-inch display, although the display technology is slightly different. Samsung have gone with the Super AMOLED display, and Google and LG have gone with an IPS display, which is based on LCD technology. Now, what this really means is viewing angles and colour reproduction. Where I'm sat right now is on around about a 35 degree angle away from the displays, and one thing that becomes instantly apparent is the Galaxy S4 display is still beautifully legible and has incredible colour reproduction even at this angle. However, the Nexus 5 is looking quite washed out and has lost quite a lot of the definition. However, if I move over the top of the screen directly, to me the Nexus 5 appears to have much better colour reproduction and a much sharper display than the Galaxy S4 does. And it's fairly difficult to show on a camera, unfortunately, in this way, so you'll have to take my word for it. But to me, the colour reproduction is better on the Nexus 5 on a direct front-on within a 30 degree angle than the Galaxy S4, which feels like it's almost oversaturating its colours a little bit. It's working too hard at that colour reproduction. The Nexus 5 feels very natural. Now, one area that we always look at as well is the weight of the devices. As I say, both devices weigh exactly the same. They both pretty much have a same in-hand feel. However, the Nexus 5 just wins slightly because it has a textured back, this gorgeous kind of felty Nexus textured back, where the Galaxy S4 has a perfectly shiny polycarbonate. Now, the main problem with polycarbonate, and also with aluminium chassis as well, is they tend to be very slippery. So even with Samsung having added a coating onto this to kind of give it a bit more grip so it sticks to your hands a bit more, it's still not as grippy as the Nexus. So if you were considering these devices and you're the sort of person that doesn't like a case on your device, and you're going to keep it naked, as it were, but you're worried about dropping it, well, the Samsung Galaxy S4 will have a slightly higher chance of being dropped or slipping through your hands than the Nexus will. So, let's take a look at the next areas. So, next up is the camera, and this is always a key thing that people are very interested in. In my opinion, the Galaxy S4 camera is better than the Nexus 5. But it's a bit hard to tell at the moment with the Nexus 5 because the Nexus 5's camera app is really poor. It doesn't really feel like it's allowing the actual camera hardware to get the absolute best shot. Its lock-on times are really slow, its low light performance is good, but you can tell it's struggling to focus, and anytime you're struggling to focus, you're taking pictures and they're coming out blurry, not what you want. And the other major problem we have at the moment really is that the camera app is very, very slow. There's a good 1.5 to 2 second delay between taking each picture. That is pretty much unacceptable in my eyes, and it's all a software thing. The camera is perfectly capable of taking faster images than that. Or images faster than that. And currently there's no other camera apps that are working with the Nexus 5. They all have a variety of different problems, from crash bugs to not actually being able to drop the shutter and take the picture. So right now, the Galaxy S4 wins on camera. It doesn't only take better pictures in perfect light, but they are higher resolution as well. We can argue whether megapixels are really all that important, and we can argue that just as we've been doing for the last 20 odd years. Ultimately, it comes down to a personal choice. Do you want a bigger image, or do you want a smaller image with more pixels crammed in if it has a better sensor? The sensor in the Nexus 5 certainly appears to be more than capable. It's only being let down by a very poor software implementation from Google, I'm afraid. Next up is speakers, and this is an area which a lot of you have been asking about. What are the Nexus 5 speakers like? Well, it's only one speaker, it's a mono, just like on the Galaxy S4. But because of the way that this has been manufactured, the Nexus 5 produces much louder, much clearer audio. The speaker on the S4 is placed at the back with a small raised bump to help it sit off the table. On the Nexus 5, it's placed at the very bottom, in this bottom corner here. In my opinion, the Nexus 5 produces much louder sound with a lot less vibration. However, if you do tip the Samsung up so that it's a little bit further away from the table, you lose some of the resonation from it bouncing off the table, but you also remove a lot of vibration. Although the audio tends to thin out a little bit more, in my opinion, where the Nexus produced very good quality mids, quite good top end, and the bass was passable. We're not expecting, a subwoofer audio here from a little mono speaker, but in my test it was so loud that I actually had to turn the Nexus 5 down because my ears were starting to hurt. The last time I actually had that was from the HTC One, which in my opinion still produces the best sound quality of any mobile device we've seen so far. But if you're looking for the sound quality, then the Nexus 5 has the win. Simple as that. I've tried both devices on headphones. The Galaxy S4 was my daily driver for a good few months, so I'm very well aware of the audio quality coming out from that. And in my opinion, the Nexus 5 has the edge just slightly, purely because, in my opinion, the Galaxy S4's audio enhancement features actually just muck up the songs. They make the songs, the audio muddy at times. And it depends quite a lot on the particular audio you're listening to, but in my opinion, this adaptive sound thing they have running on the Galaxy S4 doesn't do a very good job. Alright, so let's talk about battery life, because this is a really subjective one anyway, but people really want to know, well, what's the battery life like on the Nexus 5 compared to other devices? Well, the Galaxy S4, I've always found it to be very good for battery life if you're willing to turn a few things off, i.e. mostly all of the junk that Samsung likes to preload. If you turn all of that off, you get a device that comparably has good battery life. It's probably one of the best devices out there for battery life due to its very large battery. The Nexus 5, on the other hand, is very good as well. It's running Qualcomm's new adaptive audio technology, or DAC audio, or whatever they call it. Off the top of my head, I've just forgotten. But effectively what it does is any time the system is playing back audio, there is an improved pipeline between the audio processor and the processors, and obviously getting to your ears, the CPU in your ears. So what you get is less power being required to generate the audio. Now what that in theory leads to is a 30% reduction in battery use and during certain situations. Now those certain situations are anytime you're playing audio. Now if you think about playing a game, listening to music and so on, those are obviously the key times when you want to save your battery as much as possible. You don't want to be wasting battery on in games. You need every minute you can. And when you're listening to music, you want it to feel more like an iPod, not like a smartphone where effectively when you're listening to your music, you are draining your battery in near real time. A percent a minute kind of thing. What you want is something that feels like an iPod, like I can put my music on here and I can listen to my music for 8 hours, 9 hours, 12 hours, whatever you want to do, and I still have enough battery left to browse, send emails, update my G+, watch some YouTube videos and what have you. You don't want a nasty battery shock. Obviously a battery shock in, oh my god, my battery's dead, not, oh my god, I just got electrocuted. But anyway, so battery life, I would say the Nexus 5 and the Galaxy S4 are very comparable at this point in time. The Nexus 5 does have a smaller battery, but this adaptive technology they've got for handling audio does seem to just pull it back into contention with the Galaxy S4. It's difficult to know for certain because it's a very subjective issue, is battery. It depends on so many different variables. And obviously we've got Android 4.4 on here, and we only have 4.3 on the S4. So any improvements that Google may have made under the hood to battery life are not being applied on the S4 yet. Let's talk about the software, because when people buy mobile phones, generally these days they expect there to be a bundle of software that comes with it, whether they want it or not. And both devices offer that to certain different extents. With the Nexus 5, what we're getting is very much the pure Google experience. So what we get is Google's apps and nothing more. Now, the great thing there is both these devices are 16 gig, but on the Galaxy S4, we only had 9 gig of available space for our own stuff. Samsung had taken up all the other space with its apps and its ROM. On the Nexus, what we find is we actually have near 12 gig free, about 11.6 I think it was when I got the device out of the box. Now, straight away, the main difference for that is you've got more space to store your apps on the Nexus than you do on the S4, and it tracks down to about 2 big large games. 2 leading games from the Play Store, you'll get 2 extra ones on here compared to the S4. Gives you a simple comparison, as it were. But also, what you always have to ask yourself is, well, do I need all of these extra apps that I'm probably not going to use? Do I need a walking mate? Do I need a story album? Possibly not. These are lifestyle choices more than anything else. So the Galaxy S4 is very much a lifestyle device. It kind of offers people who maybe don't understand about the full range of apps available. What they want is everything kind of there and ready to go, almost spoon-fed to them. And so the S4, from that point of view, is a bit of a win. If you're the kind of person who doesn't want lots of hassle, doesn't want to have to guess at the apps, to spend lots of time looking for different apps you want to use, and you're interested in the features the S4 provides as additional, things like Translate, the Walking Mate, Story Album, and the excellent camera it has on the S4, then the S4 is going to win. But if you're looking for a cut-down, slimline device where everything is up to you over and above the basic googliness, then the Nexus 5 is a winner. Put simply, being able to store extra stuff on your device compared to the S4 is a win. It's just a simple win. It would have been much better, in my opinion, that Samsung had maybe a startup mode. So when you first turn on your Samsung device, it asks you, would you like to install all of the Samsung stuff, or would you just like the Google experience? And then you can pick, and if necessary, it will download the Samsung stuff to your device as opposed to taking up all of the space to begin with. This would be a happy medium, and it would then allow for, well, less bloat on the device, meaning potentially better memory management, more raw performance, and more storage space for the apps you actually want to install. The Nexus 5, in my opinion, provides the better experience from a point of view of a power user. But for an end user, for your mother, your father, your grandmother, or your friends who don't really have a wide understanding of the Android ecosystem, then the Galaxy S4 provides a great out-of-the-box experience. But I personally would be leaning towards the Nexus. So, let's sum up, shall we? We have 2 of the leading handsets, the Galaxy S4 and the Nexus 5. Both are approaching their technology slightly differently with a few twists. The Nexus 5 has weaker viewing angles at over 30 degrees, where the Super AMOLED screen on the S4 provides excellent viewing angles all round, but the solar saturation is a little bit OTT straight on, where the Nexus 5 feels really accurate. The sharpness of the Nexus 5 screen as well is really excellent front on, although potentially I think the Galaxy S4 provides the best all-round sharpness from all viewing angles. When we consider gaming is definitely better on the Nexus 5. It really benefits from having that Qualcomm Snapdragon 800 processor in there. And whilst games aren't necessarily taking full advantage of that technology yet, the raw frame rate increase from having a faster clock processor is well worth it.